Afternoon and welcome to Newcastle Borough Council's Cabinet meeting today. Welcome to Cabinet members and officers that are joining us in the room, and welcome to members of the public that may be joining us on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to see the agenda, it is detailed in the section below the video. So we've got our Cabinet members today for strategic planning, which is Councillor Andy Fear. We've got our Cabinet member for environment and recycling, which is Trevor Johnson. And we've got our Cabinet member for community safety and wellbeing, Councillor Jill Heason, Deputy Leader Stephen Sweeney, and I'm Council Leader Simon Tagg. Moving to apologies, I think we've got apologies today from Jill Waring, who's unable to attend, but everybody else is here. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do I have any for items on the agenda from members? Not seen them. Okay. Item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting on page 5 to 10. Can we agree those as a correct record? Great. Everybody's nodding, thank you. And moving to our first item of business today, which is the Walleys Quarry update report. Follows the same format as we've had for a number of months now, as we keep track of the ongoing issues at Walleys Quarry. And our Chief Executive is going to give an update on this report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, Leader, what we have is the report in the format that you're now all very familiar with. And if I can take you first of all to paragraph 3, which deals with the complaint data, you will see that the complaint data in January, for the second 2 weeks of January, week commencing the 16th and week commencing the 23rd, we've had a slight uptick in complaints there, up to 51 complaints in the last week of January. And that's also mirrored in the Environment Agency's complaints. So one of the things that we were concerned to do is really try and understand quite what had driven that. Now, clearly, those are, I guess, higher complaints than we've seen for a few months, but still significantly down on where they would have been a year or 2 years ago. In terms of the information coming from the monitoring stations, these, if you remember, are recording the percentage of time that the monitoring stations are picking up hydrogen sulfide concentration that is above the World Health Organization annoyance threshold. And three of the units at Silverdale Cemetery, Silverdale Road and Fire Station really are consistently now picking up very low levels of exceedances. Fire Station hasn't recorded anything now for 3 months, but the Gallingale and Gallingale has been consistently the area, the monitoring station that has picked up issues really over the last year or so. But you will see that in each of the months, if there is going to be an uptick, it is in that Gallingale area. So you had 2 weeks in December where Gallingale was showing exceedances over the annoyance threshold at 14 and 11%, and then again in January, 2 weeks, well, 1 week really, 11%, and another at 4.8. So, you know, those are something that we need to sort of keep an eye on. You will see in the graph underneath that the complaints do pretty much still track the hydrogen sulfide spikes that we're seeing. So you got a reasonably true picture there in terms of complaints and hydrogen sulfide. Now, in digging into what had happened over that exceedance of 11.1 in the week of the 16th to the 22nd, what we did see was that there was an exceedance, a particular exceedance that ran from 5 p.m. on the evening of the 20th of January through to 10 o'clock the following morning. And we've got a pretty good picture now of what it was that had actually happened there. So, and I think there's some information here that members will be able to take some heart from. So the gas management contractor on site, CLP Envirogas, they now continuously monitor the site remotely. So out of hours, they have got some form of telemetrics that allows them to see what's happening on site. And they picked up out of ours that there was an increase in suction within the gas collection infrastructure in those early hours of Saturday morning. And then they came onto site early on Saturday morning to see what if anything needed to be done to rectify that. And what they found when they came on site was that there was a blockage caused by ice in one particular piece of kit on site that meant that the gas that was being the machinery was actually having to work harder to suck the same amount of gas. So if we look at all of the metrics for that time, the amount of gas being collected and destroyed doesn't dip. The concentration of hydrogen sulfide within the gas doesn't change particularly, but the suction required to collect that level of gas has increased. And I guess probably the best way to think about this is if your arteries are blocked, your heart needs to work that bit harder to get the blood around the system. So in discussing this with Walleys Quarry colleagues, they're saying actually, in order to get the same amount of gas coming out, it will have been drawn gas from different parts of the site. So for that period, there will have been the possibility of fugitive emissions coming off at the side of the site nearest to the Gallingale. So that ice issue was identified and dealt with. This is to do with condensation forming in the pipework, in the gas pipework. And the problem was resolved by the Saturday morning, and then you see the complaints drop down. Now, we do also have a spike of complaints on, I think it's the 23rd of January. And try as we might, we haven't been able to identify anything particular that has caused that spike, so that the metrics from the site aren't showing anything unusual. Our officers were out on the 24th when it was cold and still weather, and weren't picking up on levels of hydrogen sulfide that would necessarily have driven that level of spike. So we're not entirely clear what has gone on there. But nonetheless, I think what we do see here in the 20th to the 21st is a dynamic response to the situation. In terms of the Environment Agency, they continue to monitor the site, and in appendix to this report, you will see effectively the month's summary from Walleys Quarry. So in terms of waste acceptance, there's been no issues, no non-conformities raised with the operator there as part of the EA's work. In terms of the level of or the odor management, there's no issues being raised there by the Environment Agency with the operator that causes a non-conformance. You'll see there's a slight reduction this month in the percentage of the area that's being capped, and that's because they're peeling back the capping on one area in order to bring more waste into a particular area that's stepped up. But as we go on down through the key performance indicators, so for example, key performance indicator 7, the hydrogen sulfide concentration within the gas, you'll see that's around about 1,500 parts per million. At one time, I suppose probably 2 years ago, that was around 6,000. So that has come down well, and we are seeing a steady level of landfill gas being collected and destroyed at just over 3,000 meters cubed per hour. So that's progressing quite well. So as previously, we've got this report from the operator. We'll be putting that on the website together with this report, so that there's a good picture of what's going on site for the public to see, should they wish. Okay.
Thank you, Martin, as always, and thank you for the work of officers in your team and yourself on this. I think since we've had the the court agreement related to the abatement notice, we now have access to more information, access into the company to get to the bottom of any issues that arise. And I think as we've seen, I think we did experience, I think a lot of people in the town, the spike at the end of January, or 23rd of January as it was. And I think in previous years, that would have been a lot worse. I think the last couple of years we would have been in a large outbreak of odour, which would lead to a lot of complaints, and also the monitoring equipment being even higher. So I think we are still moving in the right direction, particularly with the weather conditions we've had early in the year, the changes in weather condition, which in previous years would have created a large odors from this site. So again, as we always say, we're not there yet, but still encouraging that when we do have instances, we can obviously ask the operator to look into them and get, if we can, an explanation. But I'm opening up now to comments from Cabinet members. Stephen first, followed by Andy.
Yeah, thank you. When I read this report, Martin, although obviously it's not perfect, obviously we're still watching it, and obviously we should continue watching it. But I do feel when I read this report that Walleys Quarry are properly engaging with us now and being sensible, if you like. Something perhaps they could have done 10 years ago, but that's another story. But they do seem to be doing what they agreed they were going to be doing. They're working with us, not against us. They're accepting things, and they're giving us some of what's happened. And those reasons, I'm not a physicist, but they sound perfectly plausible reasons to me. And they do seem to be working with us. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think when we went through the mediation process, we, as I said previously, we got some opportunities out of that in order to exchange information and to reset the dialogue with the operator. And all of the elements of that mediation agreement have really been put into place, and we have an open conversation with them.
Andy.
Yeah, thanks very much. Again, I think I agree with Simon that, broadly speaking, this is, again, a document which shows them we're moving in the right direction. I think also what's happened at the end of January shows why we've got this on the agenda, why we're continuing to monitor it, and why we need to do that. January was the first time when and it was only minor, but nonetheless, it was the first time I smelt the odour at my property. Didn't come into it, it was in the front garden when I went out in the morning, and it dispersed very quickly. But nonetheless, it was there, and that shows that our job isn't finished. But nonetheless, I think we should remind ourselves at that moment of what it was like before we got stuck in to the problem. And really, we are going in the right direction. But I think, the little incidents in January are a warning. I'm also heartened by the way that the problem seems to have been resolved quickly, and one hopes that the engineers on the site have taken that into account, and that we're not going to have any more problem with the ice blockage and such like. So the fact that it's been a rapid response, hopefully there's a learning curve there. I still think we've got reasons to be optimistic here.
Thank you. Any other Cabinet members? No, I think from my point of view, we did have complaints I had complaints from the Poolfields area. I know there was complaints from Nutton and Silverdale area, the people that are closest to this. So we must always accept that there is a discomfort and a worry attached with any instances of odour. But I think, as you said, Andy, we seem to be going still in the right direction. And that watching brief, which we're carrying on here at Cabinet, with our officers making this a key strand of work that the council is engaged in with its partners is really important. Martin, you want to add something?
Yeah, one of the other things just that I should have said, and I think is actually really quite important here. Not only did Walleys respond to us and tell us what had happened there, they've actually put a notice up on their website. So I would encourage anybody that is really interested in this also just to visit their website, because you will get much more current information than previously.
Okay, thank you, Martin, which is part of the alert system, which we agreed as part of the settlement of the abatement notice. I think lastly is to say what Martin did say earlier about, the relevant information being published on the council's website. I would encourage anybody that's got concerns, wants to know the latest information about the odour issues, or wants to report an odour or look at the latest monitoring data or this cabinet report. They will be posted on the section on the council's website, which is linkable from the main page on the landing page on the council's website. So that information is readily available for residents. Recommendation we have before is that we note the report. We've done that, and we've asked questions, and we've commented. So all agreed? Thank you. Item number 5 then is the Revenue and Capital Budget Strategy 2023-24. This is its last stop before it goes to the Budget Setting Council meeting next Wednesday. And Stephen's going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Leader. This report presents the updated medium-term financial strategy and the proposals to be recommended to full council on the 15th of February regarding a balanced 23-24 revenue budget and the capital programme for 23-24 to 25-26. It also includes the flexible use of capital receipt strategy, the capital strategy, the treasury management strategy, the investment strategy, and a risk assessment of the level of general fund reserves required to be maintained. The provisional local government finance settlement received on the 19th of December. This has generated a further £169,000 of funding when compared to the MTFS assumptions. It is recommended that this be placed into the budget and borrowing support fund to protect the council against any income losses or increases in interest rates during 23-24. Savings and funding strategies have been identified to address a revised £2.103 million budget gap for 23-24 via a vigorous efficiency board process and have been agreed with managers as both feasible and sustainable. A major transformation programme, the One Council programme, commenced during 21-22, which involves an extensive redesign of organisational structures, process and technology underpinned by changes in culture, leadership and governance. £195,000 of savings have already been achieved during 21-22. A further £601,000 of savings have been achieved for 22-23 and a further £376,000 are proposed for 23-24. A significantly below inflation council tax increase of 1.99% per Band D property is proposed. This amounts to 10 pence per week or less for 95% of households within the borough Band A, B, C, D and E properties. Might point out the inflation rate at the moment is something like 10%. Now we're putting up by 1.99, so I think we're doing our bit to bring inflation down. The savings identified enable a continued contribution of £250,000 to the Borough Growth Fund. This will continue to enable investment in the council's priorities, including significant investment in boosting the sustainability of the environment within the borough and supporting development in the town centre. The capital programme for 23-24 to 25-26 is based on new schemes, which are vital to ensure continued service delivery and assisting the council to achieve its corporate and service objectives as set out in the council plan. These schemes total 48.064 million, of which 32.977 million relates to 23-24. This includes schemes funded for major investment into the borough, successfully secured via the Future High Streets Fund and the Town Deals Fund for both Newcastle and Kingsgrove. Delivering the capital programme for 23-24 will require prudential borrowing to be undertaken. The impact of borrowing is included in this DFS. Now, people will have heard this from me a number of times over the process. The figures and dates and they might change, but the basic gist is the same. However, what is new is the consultation process that we've had on the budget that we've now got the answers to, responses to. And I'm very pleased to say the 3 council services by far seen as most important in refuse collection, parks, playgrounds and open spaces, and street cleaning, which I don't think anybody in this room could possibly disagree with, and are certainly our council priorities. So I'm happy to endorse this and pass over to you, Leah.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Again, I think a very robust budget, which we're proposing here. Keeping to our commitment to keep the council tax increase below 2%, this budget delivers on that. And also, I think the wider story about this budget is it also begins to help us to deliver on those regeneration priorities using the Future High Streets Fund and the Town Deal, which is really important, particularly for our town centre. I know that a lot of residents are worries about the future of our town centre, worries about safety in our town centre. I think this administration over the last few years has brought in with our partners the bid, our state-of-the-art CCTV system. We've bid for money and got 11.5 plus 23.5 million pounds for regeneration in the town, and we can begin to deliver on that on the back of this budget. It was disappointing that the and you didn't mention this, Steve, but it went to scrutiny a couple of weeks ago, and there was a number of recommendations put forward by the Labour group, which I think would have strangled our capacity to regenerate the town, with questions about the levels of borrowing, trying to restrict the levels of borrowing, which, as you'll see in the report, are actually affordable and are actually what other councils do across the country. And within Staffordshire, most councils are borrowing significant amounts of money to enable them to deliver their priorities to the borough. This council hasn't done that for many years because of house receipts from the sale of the housing stock to Aspire back in 1998. But it has spending has been frustrated over the years through the lack of the council having the nerve to borrow the significant amounts of money it needs to regenerate this borough. And we are taking those steps to do that now with an affordable plan, which is in the budget here. So I think we reject the Labour group's proposals to try and limit that to an unsustainable level. Actually, they suggested a 3 times escalator, sort of similar to what a budget, what you would have for your mortgage. But that came out at the scrutiny meeting, didn't it, Steve? And some of the Conservative members on the committee shot it down quite rightly. That would restrict too much the capacity of the council to regenerate. It may even mean that we have to give funds back to the government because we wouldn't be able to spend them. Reminds me of, sort of Labour councils in Stoke for many years who had many millions of pounds over many years, particularly during the 2000s period, and ended up giving some of that money back to the government because they couldn't spend it, because they couldn't bring the proposals forward and they didn't have the nerve to do it. This administration has the nerve to carry through this regeneration. We promised it in our election and we will do that. And part of this budget, the capital side of it, is to help us to achieve that. I think the Labour group also go on about, the volatility in the markets. We're all aware of that, but also we have a treasury management team at this council, and we also use the commercial services, Crown commercial services, to ensure we get the best costs for energy, for example, for anything we do. And we ensure we are taken into account. And as Stephen pointed out, we put money into a reserve that is taken into account the volatility, whether that's inflation, whether that's energy costs, cost of living. So we already have that in place as well. I think also that the Labour group have got issues over, obviously, the value of assets and land sales. We have delivered on the programme we put forward in 2018 and will deliver on as we go forward to ensure we have capital money coming in from receipts coming in to help us to fund our capital programme. And just cast your mind back to pre-December 2017 when the council was stalling on all of its plans. It got a recycling system that didn't work. It got a Rycroft scheme that was breaking down and was collapsing around their ears. And they had no plans to move anything forward. And we've done that over the last few years. We've delivered the Kidsgrove Sports Centre. We've delivered the Guildhall, brought back into use. And we've also now got plans to regenerate our town and take it to the next level. So I think if the Labour group wish to put those proposals forward to the budget as an amendment, we would welcome that and welcome debating, and we will welcome voting that down on the night because it's not in the best interests of our town. So just wanted to add that from the scrutiny meeting. I think it's really important that we address those amendments that Labour put forward, and I think our group did an excellent job in scrutiny of doing that, and I'm happy to reinforce that now that we don't accept their recommendations, and if they bring them to the council on Wednesday the 15th of February, I look interesting having a debate with them. Opening now to other questions or comments about the budget. Andy.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yes, this again, I'm happy when I read this report. An awful lot of hard work has gone into this, and I think the headline story on this at the end of the day is that this administration has kept its pledge to keep the rise in the poll tax low, 1.99%, as opposed to the national headline inflation figure. That hasn't happened elsewhere. We have stuck to that. And again, I think, hats off to all our officers who work very hard to make sure that that can be delivered and has been delivered in this way. I also agree with what was said. I was in the audience for the scrutiny meeting that we've been talking about, not on the committee. But no, a series of amendments were put forward. They were rejected by that committee. It's important to remember that. Democracy, which I'm in favour of, means that they can come back to us at full council. I've little doubt that the arguments which we used to reject those amendments there will have equal force and power at the full council meeting. When we look at this, I think you're quite right, Simon. One of the things that we've got here, and it's very easy, of course, for any opposition to do this at one level, but in the previous administration, what we saw was dithering and procrastination. That leads to stagnation. It won't take our town anywhere. There is no gain without an element of risk. There is no such thing as an entirely risk-free environment. That said, as we can see, it's not that these things have not been recognised. There are secure mechanisms in place to make sure that this risk is manageable, that we see what's going on, but we have chosen to take the borough forward. So this seems to me a very robust set of proposals, and I certainly will have pleasure in supporting them next week.
Thank you, Andy. Any other comments from Cabinet members? Not seeing them. So recommendations, a whole raft of them there. But the key thing is we're referring this budget to the meeting of the full council next Wednesday to set the budget and also set that low council tax increase of 1.99% while still investing in our priorities through the Borough Growth Fund, which Stephen indicated, and also a focus on that regeneration of the town. This is a once in a generation opportunity to regenerate our town, thanks to the government investment that we've received so far. And I think, and I say so far because I think we will be bidding for more money in the future to carry on and improve even further the regeneration of the town. And this budget sets us in good stead to start to deliver on some of that. So I move the recommendations. All agreed? Thank you. Moving then now to item 6, which is Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Safer Streets Funding Round 4. And Jill's going to introduce this.
Right, I'm pleased to bring this report to Cabinet. I'm sure you've all read it. It's a good news story, certainly for the Safer Streets Round 4 funding. A grant funding offer from the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner under the Safer Streets Round 4 scheme has been offered to us. Obviously, I'm asking that we seek approval from Cabinet to accept it and spend the grant on the agreed programme of projects. If I go back to October last year, the PFCC came into Newcastle and we had a walk around with partners where we were looking at identifying various projects to help reduce crime and antisocial behaviour in the town centre and further afield. Various projects have been put forward, but as a result of this, we have been offered some funding from the PFCC. £750,000 was awarded to the PFCC to be split across 5 areas. We've been lucky enough to be offered a total of 150,000, and part of the funds has got to be spent before the end of March. And things that were identified in Newcastle, which I really welcome, are improved lighting, more CCTV, environmental and alley gating. They were agreed. And it is like safety improvements in the town centre, which I welcome. Going forward, there are other items to be followed through, and that is further gating, street pastors. We don't have street pastors at the moment. They're a very good scheme working in the town centre, particularly in the nighttime economy, and we could look to the future to tie them in with the Women's Safe Space, which is located in the town centre. There's also a future campaign for £40,000 for antisocial behaviour campaigns. I think it's a very good for the town centre, and I accept the proposal and ask the Cabinet to do the same.
Thank you, Jill. And I think this is really good news for the town. I've talked about in the previous item about improved safety, cracking down on antisocial behaviour. We can do that with a good CCTV system expanded even further, and also the opportunity for continuing the wardens and for working with the police and getting the police out and about in the town. I think this funding makes that a lot easier to do. I think one of the things which is really important is also the gating of certain alleyways. The history of the town is that people used to live on the outside of the town and walk through the alleys to get into the shopping area and the market area. Of course, things have changed now. Some of those are dark and dingy, etc. So getting them gated and closed, out of hours, for example, or even permanently if necessary, is a key part of the proposals. I think also continue to improve our subways as well with improved CCTV. We've done a lot already with the advanced town deal money we had from the government, and anybody that goes down to the Sunken roundabout, the Grosvenor roundabout, will see the improvements there of a nice light, clean a safe environment for people to walk, and we want to extend that out towards the other subways around the town as well. And this funding will help us to work towards doing some of that. So really endorse this. And I had a conversation with the Police and Crime Commissioner when he visited Newcastle a few weeks ago, and he's confident we can make the best use of this money. It will support the extra officers that he's put into Newcastle, and he has in towns across Staffordshire as well, to improve policing. And I think that will be more and more evident in our town as we go forward. Steve.
Yeah, a couple of things I've picked up on is you mentioned earlier about the state-of-the-art CCTV system, not in this one, but it's more state-of-the-art now because there's even more cameras going in. So that can't be bad. I also like on the future plans, a second tranche of funding, Friar Street subway tiling refurbishment, which I think would be an excellent thing to brighten up the entrance to them. But no, I think it's excellent. It's really good news for Newcastle, and I think the PFCC has supported us very well when he's visited there. Thank you.
Any other comments? Not seeing any. Okay, we've got recommendations before us, which Jill has moved. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is procurement of a service provider for the revenue and income and advertising revenue, particularly from our advertising hoardings in 13 locations across the borough. As the report says, the provision for the contract expires at the end of February, so a process has been undertaken to find a new contractor. Details are in this report. We do have a confidential section of this which contains some of the financial information, which we will obviously come on to later in confidential session. But I think this is an important income generation area for the council. I think as we look at we've just set setting our budget next week, and we've just commended a report to go to there. In there is about getting income into the council. And I think these sites, as we've seen around the town, some on the A34, high profile sites for advertising, bring in an income to the council. And we've been partnering with obviously an organisation for a number of years to provide that, but that is coming to an end. I'd like to amend the recommendation though, because I think I'd like to take a closer look at the tendering process and work with officers on that. I'd like the Cabinet to delegate authority to myself as the leader and portfolio holder in consultation with the Executive Director for Growth and Development to award the contract to provide the advertising services. That will give us just a little more time to look into this. And I know there is a local company that have applied for this contract. I just think it needs to be looked at in a bit more detail before we make a decision. So if Cabinet members would like to agree with me on that. Steve? Yeah. Any comments from anybody? Okay, so as per the recommendation I've just read out, all agreed? Thank you. And we're now on to item 8, which is the forward plan. We'll go through it page by page as we usually do. I can locate it myself. Page 1 is on page 136, which details the this cabinet meeting, and then goes on to page 137. But then we come on to the March cabinet meeting. All agreed, page 137. Over the page, we get on to the April meeting. All agreed? Okay. 139 is the all of the April cabinet meeting. As you'll see, there are a lot of items coming forward, keeping things going nice and busily here at the council, making decisions and doing things on behalf of our residents. And the last page, 140, is just the last item there from the April cabinet meeting. So that's the forward plan. All agreed? Thank you. Next item is item 9, which is urgent business. Haven't received any urgent business. Also haven't received any indications from members of the public or from fellow councillors who want to speak. So I'll now move item 10, which is a disclosure of exempt information, and resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of that information as per the Local Government Act 1972 Part 1 Schedule 12A as amended. I do so move. All agreed? Thank you. And we'll bring the public meeting to a close. Thank you.